Fundraising. I'm Paul Sheldon with Dreamosophy, and we're now in day 4 of the art of fundraising. And you've had some opportunity to try on the 7 questions conversation, at least in your own imagination. And Karen did a wonderful job of adapting the approach letter for potential supporters of a project. Karen, do you mind if I share your letter?
No, go ahead.
So I'm always startled in the 21st century when somebody actually does their homework. Well done. And so Karen came up with this letter where she says to a prospective supporter, on behalf of William D. Potter Rescue Shelter, I'd like to ask for your advice. The rescue shelter is considering undertaking a fundraising effort in a year to begin our rescue shelter on solid ground financially. Before we undertake this effort, however, we'd like to be sure of the possibility of success. And he says, Karen Johnson, my daughter, is my spokesperson for the rescue shelter that I'm proposing. Soon, Karen Johnson will contact you to schedule a brief meeting to learn more about your involvement with the rescue shelter. Karen's not going to ask you for money currently, nor do we expect you to ask for money on our behalf at this time. But as part of your conversation with her, I'd like to ask for your advice on the best ways to reach out to a few key individuals who may be interested in financing this project, or who may be able to introduce us to the right people, so that we can also ask for their advice too. At this time, we'd like to discuss the idea of this new project with prospective funders to determine if sufficient enthusiasm, support, and resources exist to justify undertaking a major effort. Karen will ask for 30 to 45 minutes of your time to get together in person or by phone to talk about your interests. Again, I want to assure you, you will not be asked for money at this time. Although the William D. Potter Rescue Shelter current and future fundraising activities will be a topic to be discussed, etc. And then she closes off, I'd be most grateful if you'd set up a time with Karen when she calls. Thank you for all you're doing to promote the care of animals in your area. Sincerely, most influential person. P.S. If you haven't already done so, I'd be grateful if you could take a few minutes to review the materials that accompany this letter prior to our meeting. So that's an example of how to adapt this invitation to the 7 questions as a starting place for a conversation with someone who's a prospective supporter. And remember here, we started out with this cycle of possibilities that I call the 7 C's. And that led us into the cascade of the 7 questions. We do have resources on the LinkedIn group. This letter, let me see if I can copy this into the chat. The template for this letter is in our LinkedIn group, and so you can download it and adapt it for your own use. You can make it longer or shorter, try out several versions, see what works best. Because what we're working on here is a conversation for possibility. Dreamosophy is designed as a unique process for dreaming up a life worth giving. And we have these conversations for possibility. And so I've posted the videos again. So we have 3 sessions now that are posted on the web. And of course, today and tomorrow we'll continue to post records of our conversations so that you can look back on them at least for a few weeks and download them if you choose. But what we're leading up to is a conversation that cultivates relational fundraising. And I borrowed this term from Abby Lewis, who's on the call this morning. She talks about providing services for formerly incarcerated people, not as a transactional basis, but as a relational basis. In other words, it's not about just helping somebody get their Social Security card back or get their driver's license back after a time of incarceration. It's about developing a relationship in the context of which we serve their needs and we meet their needs. And the same is true in the art of fundraising. we're cultivating relatedness with people who are possible supporters. And we're doing that around what do they care about? What are they involved with? And so I'd like to pause for a minute and invite you to each speak a little bit, maybe a minute or two, to say your name and the project or organization or possibility that you're dreaming up, where you are in that process. In other words, have you already started raising money? Do you have a vision of how much you're going to need? And how this idea that we've been discussing of a conversation for possibility is impacting your thinking about raising money for your project. So let's try just on your own, unmute and start speaking and see if we have a logical sequence. Otherwise, I'll start calling on people.
Well, I'll just say that at this point, a project that we're exploring is the possibility of a community kitchen and a place to feed people, peace houses. Feeding people with Uncle Food's Diner for 30 years, and we've always had a place to do it until April of last year when until COVID, when we couldn't feed people at the Methodist Church anymore. And then we started feeding people on the street. And we took the food to the 5 different locations in town for 2 years. And then we found out that after COVID, we wouldn't be allowed to go back to the Methodist Church. The congregate dining thing was the problem with feeding people all in one place, which was why we dispersed and delivered the food. And the packaging's very expensive. So then we got Pioneer Hall for last winter, and now Pioneer Hall is closed. And we've been feeding in the gazebo at the park, along with Jason and Vanessa when they do their meals. We do Tuesday, they do Thursday and Friday. But what we really need is a place, and nobody really wants to house our program. Or Jason and Vanessa's. We're having trouble finding a space. So one idea is to find a building that will be a kitchen that we can all maybe work out of. We can still work out of the kitchen at the Methodist, but we can't feed there. And so this is a very exploratory phase of just trying to figure out if there's a building. Where would it be and how would it work? Because that's where we are. We're stuck, and I think that there can be money for it, but we're kind of even before the money about this, which is, where would we ask to fund to feed people, and then we could maybe find a way to fund the project.
You're muted, Paul.
All my wonderful pearls of wisdom gone into the ether. Thank you for your candor and for the transparency. And you're at the very beginning stages of confluent intuition and creative imagination and beginning to have careful attention and careful intention and conscious attention around not necessarily the money yet. So if somebody like the United Church of Christ in El Sobrante, California, came to Planting Justice and said, gee, if we give you the land and the resources and the money, can you start a homeless feeding program that's a pay what you can afford cafe? That has now developed into a project called The Good Table, where they haven't opened their doors yet, but they've had all the support they needed to get the facility ready to be able to feed a lot of people on a pay what you can afford basis. So if somebody in this valley popped up and offered that to you, then that's the sort of serendipitous confluence that you're cultivating at this point. And it's important, as you know, that you remain open. You have the dream. The dream is your skyhook. You lay out the possibility of the dream and you pull yourself forward towards that with whatever you can lay your hands on, and allow people to emerge in a caring way, like, gee, I don't know how to do that, but I have this available. And then we'll see if that can get constellated in a way that works. So thank you. Someone else?
Well, my project, you, of course, you read the letter, but I wanted to share. I went to my dad. My dad is 101.
Wow.
And yeah, he's going to be 102 in December. And he's great. I mean, he is awesome. He jokes. He is just funny as heck. But anyway, I told him about the letter, and I told him what I was going to do. I said, what I want to do is I'm going to inherit some money from him, and I'm going to start with that money, but I'm also going to get other people involved. But I told him that that's what I was going to do. I was going to take some of his inheritance and apply it toward this. He just lit up. He was like beaming. He was so happy because he took care of stray cats in the little town of Menard. He fed them. He took them to the vet, got them fixed, did all this stuff for these stray cats. So he loves animals. He had deer on his property that he fed every day. So he loves animals. So I said, doing an animal rescue in your name is just perfect. He just loved it. So we're at the beginning stages, and I anticipate that we're going to do really great.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that vision. And we're going to circle back around to that in just a minute.
Okay.
Someone else?
I can go ahead. And so I again, I had mentioned with the organization Pathways to Peace. It's an NGO of the UN, and it was a contact that I had about a year and a half ago through LinkedIn from someone in Guinea about they're working on a shelter. Well, they're working on an orphanage and a school, and as we communicated, I found out that this is a real deal. Brought it to the organization, that president of Pathways to Peace, and he said, yes, let's work with them. So he created a training program around what they wanted was gender-based violence training for the staff and for others, and ultimately the students. And we got into it and found out the big issue was female genital mutilation and early marriage, and that their girls were refusing that in their community, and then they're homeless, and they're kicked out of their home. And so we're creating a shelter. Actually, created a shelter for these girls. This is a girls' shelter in Republic of Guinea. We need $20,000 for a year for this shelter. We've raised a half of that, and we've opened the shelter. We said we're going to do that. So we're right in the middle of it. And so this whole approach that you have is a real springboard to new ways of engaging other people in this. So I'm very excited about bringing this to our team, to our Dreams team, Dream, and going with it. So I think this is going to be very effective.
Lovely. Thanks, David. And we're going to talk more about that. Someone else?
This is Peter. Oh, go ahead, Peter. I'm sorry. That's okay. That was bound to happen.
Confluence.
Yes. A C word, Paul. I'm happy to share a little bit about my new project, which I call Resilient Food Sheds. What I like to say is I want to make it easier for good food businesses to do the right thing. It's surprisingly hard. We talked about yesterday a little bit about the funding, but simply doing the right thing, even if you're funded, can be hard. I have a three-legged stool. I like three-legged stools. I work on legislation because the law has to be written correctly for people to do things right. So many people who work on legislation want to pass a law, have a party, and move on to a new law. I work on defense of regulation, implementation, the things that come after you pass the law, because they don't tend to get implemented very well.
Especially when the opposition refuses to appropriate funding.
There are a number of reasons. That's a good one. Yes. And then finally, education. If people don't know what the law is, or the regulators don't know what it is, a surprising number of times I've corrected the regulators, it has to be dealt with. So I've been doing this just over a year. I have a reach to about 7,500 small businesses, mostly through Facebook groups, and they are starting to appreciate this and reach out to me. And so I am organizing a bit. I hope to be fiscally sponsored by the end of this year. I'm funded on a few private donations and my own savings at the moment, and that can't last. I am going to put out my first newsletter in October. I have a lot of news saved up and some good stories to tell. And this conversation this week is influencing how I'm thinking about that newsletter. So that is very much appreciated.
Lovely. And your homework for the next week, which is going to extend beyond our time together, but I'll be checking in with all of you, will be to find 5 people with whom you can practice the 7 questions and do it. Don't start with your biggest potential prospect that you can't afford to lose, but start with people who will allow you to bring your cheat sheet with you and have the 7 questions in front of you and practice the flow of this conversation. And conversation for possibility is not my phrase. I think Fernando Flores coined that phrase, but the Landmark people have really promoted it. It's really a wonderful opportunity to speak into being a possibility. And that's what these 7 questions are designed to do. Someone else? And by the way, you don't all have to speak here. We can go on in just a moment to talking about how not to ask for money.
Hey, Paul, do you mind if I go?
Please.
Yeah, I'm actually down at my farmers market. I'm Sean from Freedom Farms, and I'm live here at the farm stand in the Medford Farmers Market. And I'm at the very beginning phases of my project, thanks to the inspiration from Paul and Abby. And right now, actually, I just got somebody randomly walked by and handed me a $20 donation. So it's really interesting that we're talking about this, and and I'm going to put that in my envelope and just kind of like, okay, setting my intentions with it, because
you should frame it.
I just love, yeah, exactly. But this has been a great opportunity for me just to get out into the community and start talking about the issue of incarceration in the U.S. And so many people are stopping by just to chat about it. And, it's not necessarily a big moneymaker at this point, but it's really an opportunity for me to just kind of get out there and start talking about this issue. And already, I'm getting so much positive feedback from it, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's lovely, And so my next steps are going to be just to keep on keeping on and get my board of directors and just start the business process around that. But so that's where I'm at, and I'm so appreciative of this call and everything that we're doing here. It's just really inspirational, and it's just exactly what I needed. So thank you so much,
inspiring,
guys.
Sean. And I would suggest that you start practicing the 7 questions with these random contacts in public, because you don't have to ask the first question, how did you first hear about us, because they're standing in front of you. But have you ever been involved in anything like this in the past? Tell me about it. And what do you think of what we're doing? And do you see anything here that you don't like? And just practice with people who come in. And sometimes you'll find in 5 or 10 minutes, you can get all the way down to, if we asked you for a contribution, would you give to us? And can you fill out this card here so we can get in touch with you later? So it's a wonderful opportunity to give, you have this moment of connection with someone when you're eyeball to eyeball, face to face, and you feel the connection, Now, what's the conversation that you can cultivate? And the 7 questions are very useful for that. Just skip through as the spirit moves you, as it were. 1 or 2 more folks?
I guess I
saw
could
Abigail
just
raise
talk
her hand.
about Golden Rule for just a super sec. We're blessed to have Paul on the team. We're a whole person approach to working with the formerly incarcerated, and it's been a sort of a slow grinding process, but like Paul talks about, we've been planting a lot of seeds. I've been talking to people for 3 years now about Golden Rule, and it definitely has been paying off now. And our approach is we've been really blessed with some grants. We got a huge grant yesterday or this week, but we're looking to expand into 3 different ways. Talking to people, getting donations. We're using grants to raise money, and we're also starting Golden Rule Residential, so we can generate income in a more business-like way. So we're working kind of a three-pronged approach to raising money for the nonprofit, and I feel really good about that, and really blessed that we have Paul on our team.
And I've been really inspired, Abby, to watch how open you are to innovation. And this phrase disruptive innovation is in the culture these days. But when I first heard about your work a year ago, there was nothing that I saw immediately about residential transition. You had the drop-in center, and you were providing services to formerly incarcerated people. And in a very short period of time, the aspect of housing first has come to the fore and has become a fulcrum for how to organize what Golden Rule represents. So I'm always intrigued by these opportunities that bubble up spontaneously out of the dream stream as an underground lake, and then these artesian fonts spring up, and some people just pour concrete and try to suppress them. Like the Los Angeles River, there's a stretch of the Los Angeles River right by Griffith Park where the Los Angeles Zoo is, where the river flows around the end of the Santa Monica Mountains. And there are artesian springs through about a 2-mile stretch that for more than 100 years, they've been trying to pave over them. And every time they do, they just bubble up and the pavement just isn't stable. And so finally, as a result of the work that we did 30 years ago, creating the Friends of the Los Angeles River, they have designated that stretch as what they call the soft bottom section. And they're allowing the willow trees to grow again, and they're getting little pools where there are fish, and there are walking trails and biking trails. And of course, when the floods come, they flood it all. But the willow trees persist now because they've been there for 1 million years, and allowing those artesian inspirations to bubble up is a wonderful way of realizing what possibilities might emerge. And sometimes you can't do what bubbles up, and you have to step away. But you're just a wonderful example of allowing the dream stream to flow. One more person?
Hi,
I could go.
also,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Isabella.
hi everybody. My name, it's so nice to hear everybody speaking and sharing. My name is Isabella Lee Tibbetts, and I am the Development Associate for Southern Oregon Climate Action Now, which I think is everybody here local. So
Not
I,
everyone is local.
not
We
ev-
have people in California and Texas, and on other days we've had folks from South Africa and St. Louis. So, but yes, the vast majority are in the Rogue
Amazing.
Valley.
Wow, amazing. So just for those who don't know, Southern Oregon Climate Action Now, SOCAN, has been in the Rogue Valley for 10 years now, and worked on bringing awareness around climate change to the community through project groups and through a 10-week course called the Master Climate Protector class. And that is where I got involved with SOCAN initially, and have followed them throughout the years. And this last year, they, at their 10-year anniversary, they announced that they were going to be hiring their first staff position, which is a development associate position, to help with fundraising and donor relations. So I applied and somehow miraculously got the job. I'm a community organizer and activist, so I'm very much on the front line and not so familiar with the fundraising and donor and money aspects of nonprofits. So this has been an awesome new experience for me. And so what we're doing right now is SoCan just announced a big fundraising campaign. And if you hear my children in the background, I have 2 little boys. So it's kind of chaotic here. But SoCan is in the process of hiring their first executive director to take off a lot of the work of the co-facilitators, who are Kathy and Alan. And they are retired, but they're not retired because this is their baby. And so I am working to help raise funds to hire an executive director. So we started in September a 5-month fundraising campaign, and that is our goal is to raise 60,000, or excuse me, sorry, yeah, 60,000 for the executive director position. We were amazingly fortunate to get a $30,000 grant from the Oregon Raindrop Foundation. And so that really gave us a nice start, but we still have to pretty much raise that much by individual donations. So that's where I come in and, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you. It's a perfect segue because so you're going to adapt that approach letter because it's not going to be hypothetical now. You're not going to say we're considering undertaking a campaign. We are undertaking a campaign, and as a first step to inviting you to participate, we'd like to ask for your advice. And you and I can talk offline about how specifically to adapt this for SoCan. Since we're local, we can meet for a cup of something.
Oh, wonderful.
And this is a perfect transition to where I wanted to go today, if you don't mind my jumping in here and picking up your momentum, because we want to get to this question of how not to ask for money. I build this session today as how to ask for money don't. Because the sequence of the 7 questions that is represented in the Dreamosophy approach to the art of fundraising is specifically designed to get to this point where someone has answered the question, if we were to ask you for a financial contribution or to ask others for their support, would you? Would you say yes? And someone says yes. Now what? You can use the chart to say what level would you feel most comfortable at, and they'll say $1, $5, $10, $100,000. And then where do you go from there? How do we move the conversation forward? And so there are 3 different ways that I have suggested that are just to loosen up the tension around asking for money, so that you don't actually have to ask people for money. And this is one of those subtle shifts that we talked about, like shifting from being interesting to being interested. You're interested here in finding out, how does someone feel? I was thinking of you for, and depending on the nature of your project, whether it's a real estate development or a market or a nonprofit undertaking, a contribution, a loan, an investment of $10,000. How does that feel to you? And this is based on your research, where you've looked into what these people have given in the past to other organizations or projects. You've asked them at the beginning of your 7 questions cascade, tell me about your involvement. I'm unabashed about asking people about their previous activities. Oh, so what was your role in supporting that? Oh, I was on the board and I gave them some money. Really? Do you mind telling me how much you gave to them? Or do you mind telling me how much you invested, like I was talking about the person in Arizona who had invested $500,000 in his last project. So we ask people to share, and people will decline. You can be diplomatic about it. I don't want to ask you to disclose something you're not comfortable disclosing, but do you mind telling me how much you invested in that prior project? And so you have this information in the back, or you've met with them and you see that they drive a bigger Tesla, or they live in a larger house up the hill or with a view of the lake. It gives you sort of a range of what you feel comfortable. It's an intuitive call. And you say, I was thinking of you for an investment of $10,000. How does that feel to you? So you haven't actually asked them to give $10,000. You're asking them how they feel. Or if you were asked today, how would you feel about making an investment or a contribution or a loan guarantee of $10,000 or $100,000 or $400,000? Is that something you've done in the past? And people will tell you honestly, well, I've done that before, and yeah, I might be able to do that. Or no, that's not what I'm doing this year. I'm only funding $1 million projects or more. Or no, I'd be more comfortable with $1,000. In other words, you've eliminated some of the stress of asking people for money by asking them how they feel. Or you can be more direct and say, would you consider making a gift of $10,000 in your mother's honor? I've always been a very strong supporter of doing things to honor others, rather than asking for a gift from you to our organization. You ask for a gift or an investment to honor someone that they've said that they care about, especially if they've done that sort of thing in the past. Naming rights are huge in creating capital investments and things that are going to last. So that is the simple essence of how not to ask for money, is to ask how people feel. How does that sit with you? And anyone can speak up. Can you imagine yourself asking that question? I see David nodding. Thank you. And as you imagine yourself asking that question, how does it feel to you? How does this impact your stress level with the idea of asking people for money?
To me, it's still pretty close on that edge of asking money. It's a very subtle, different way, but it's still, in me, it still makes me feel a little bit like stressed, honestly.
Yeah. And there are two things to do about that. So that may be your intuitive sense that it's not time yet. Don't push it. Stay with the hypothetical. If we asked you for a contribution, would you make one, and what level would you feel most comfortable at? And use the chart and let them point and leave it there. And don't ask them to do anything today. Circle back around in a week or a month or a year. Or maybe you're not the right asker. You do the hypothetical conversation with people to find out their level of support, and then you pass through to a board member or a committee member or even another staff member who feels comfortable going around and collecting the checks. Because one of the purposes of doing the 7 questions is to get the lay of the land, to find out not if you have one donor, but do you have 10 or 20? And Isabella, this will be very relevant for you, because you're trying to raise what for your organization is a larger amount of money. So if you have several $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 donors, maybe you don't want to ask them for money right away. Just keep a list and come back in October or November to go around and tick off the people that you know have said that they want to support. It's really an intuitive call. There's not a right way to do this. It's not a formula that if you do the formula, it works every time. It's an intuitive process of feeling your way in. And Abigail, for you, though, I would recommend that you practice. Find 5 people in the next week and ask them how they would feel about a contribution of $50 or $100, and just practice and get through that intuitive inhibition about asking people for money. My mother taught me as a child that there are 3 things that you don't do. You don't go places that you're not invited. You don't talk to strangers, and you don't talk about money. I've never been very good at following the rules. So I've built my career around doing all three. I love to go places that I wasn't invited, that are just a community gathering. I love to talk to strangers and find out what they're interested in. And I have no inhibition about talking with people about money. So it would be good for you to practice that, and just practice with people you know, or you know a little bit, and start at a comfortable level for you. At Planting Justice, when we did our street canvas, as I mentioned the other day, we started with $7 a month as a sustainer level. And almost anybody can defer a cup of coffee for a $7 a month pledge. So
Did you guys make those asks in person, or was it
Yeah.
an email that you were asking people to do
No.
that? Or
well, yes, we did it by email, we did it by phone. But initially we did it on the street, in person, standing outside a Whole Foods market.
I'm guessing it would maybe a bit of a time before people would you get them on the spot to
Yeah.
get, sign up
Yep.
somehow digitally?
Yep. No,
Okay.
We had them sign a list. And this is really naive. We had people give their credit card numbers and the CVC code from their credit card numbers and their billing address to formerly incarcerated people on the street that they'd never met.
Wow. Cool.
And we got 1,000 people in the first 6 months. So yeah, you just practice. But now with cell phones, you can do it on the spot. You can bring up the website and hand your phone to them and have them put their credit card number in, or you can bring up the website on their phone and let them put their information in and do it on the spot. Someone else, how's this impacting you? As you imagine yourself talking with people about how they would feel about making a contribution, what's that feel like to you? Mad, glad, happy, sad, terrified? I should learn how to do Zoom polls so that you can push buttons and tell me.
I'm in the you don't talk about money category.
Yeah.
That's one of my problems, I guess.
Yeah. And as I said with Abigail, that may mean that you're not the right person to be doing the asking. And so find out who else in your organization is willing to practice, but also, like Abigail, practice. Go out just as conscious practice 5 times in the next week, and either on the phone or better in person, ask somebody what level of contribution they would feel most comfortable with, and ask them how they would feel about doing that today.
Call me, Elizabeth. We can practice with each other.
Yeah.
I'll ask
Isabel,
you for money
thanks
if you
for
ask
joining
me.
us.
I feel like that if I've talked to them about my vision, and I've asked them, what they're interested in, and kind of gotten a little bit related, then asking them how they feel about contributing seems really easy.
Perfect. Wonderful. Yeah. And so that's where the language of the 7 questions becomes very useful, because if you practice using the exact phraseology, if we were to ask you for a contribution, would you make one? And at what level would you feel most comfortable? Broaches that topic, and you haven't asked them for money yet.
Right.
You've just asked them what they would feel comfortable with. And then oftentimes I will say, when is the best time to ask you for that contribution?
Yeah.
And many times people say now is fine, but many times people say we do our giving in October or December, or at the end of the month or whatever. And so then you just say, great, we'll get back to you in a few weeks.
Yeah. Well, in my parenting classes, I teach my parents to use phrases. Use the same phrase over and over with their children, and it works great. It's a way that you know what to say, and you don't have to think. You don't have to go, now what am I supposed to say now? You're in your head. You're in your head where you shouldn't be. So,
But you'll be in your head the first few times you practice. It's like
oh
learning to
yeah,
sing a
oh yeah,
song.
because you don't know, you haven't, once you memorize them though, once you can kind of like generate them without,
Yes.
you know, thinking about it, then it's easy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so the first time you heard row, row, row your boat, you had to think about it. But you probably don't remember that now because merrily, 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 life is but a dream just flows naturally because you've done it so many times. And so practicing is really important. All right, we have time if somebody has a burning question, like David has his hand raised, and then I'm going to sing a song and move on into the VIP session.
So just a quick point. It seems to me that if someone is talking to us to begin with, there's some level of interest. There's some level of, what's going on here, as opposed to if someone's not interested at all, they're not
Yeah,
going to be having the conversation. So this is a way of gradually moving to, as you're saying, developing relationship, developing comfort to the point of, ultimately, focus on some funding. Or as you say, it's about what are they interested in and want to support that. So I appreciate your approach here.
yeah, and read the signs. So if somebody's looking at their watch and checking their email on their phone and looking on their computer because they're sitting behind their desk, first ask, maybe this is not the right time for us to be doing this. Should we find another time? If you don't have their undivided attention. But if you're clear that they're here and this is the best you're going to get, jump to asking for referrals and move on. If somebody's giving you negative signs like, this is not for me, don't push them. Now, as I said, some people do that very effectively. They ask everybody and they push hard to get as much as they can. I think it's more important to invest in the relationship than to get the one contribution. And on the other end of that, I've tried it the other way, and I've had people thank me for pushing them so hard and laugh about how I would never have done this if you hadn't pushed me so hard. And now I'm really happy that I did. Thank you very much. So it's an intuitive call. But I would much rather get less today and more tomorrow than run into the risk of having somebody feel negative about us and spread negative rumors. As we say, people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And on that note, I'm going to sing a moment of song, an old Bulgarian love song. Na srce mi, star merak leži. Na srce mi, star merek gori. Ljubov, ljubov, ljubov. Od zvezdi oceana. Od zvezdi oceana. I od srce galena. There has been a burning in my heart of longing and desire. Is there any end to longing and desire? Oh, love, 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 studded with stars. Oh, love, 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 caressed by sunshine. I'll leave you with that thought. Those of you who have signed up for the VIP session, please join us. And I'm going to sign off for just a moment. I'll be muted while I start another Zoom call for another organization, and then I'll be back online with you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Yeah.
you.
See ya.
See ya. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry? Are you there, Jerry?
I apologize to the three of you. I have to start a Zoom call for the Bellevue Grange. And so I think I'm going to need to make Elizabeth the host momentarily, and then I'm going to log out and log in so that I can get the Bellevue Grange Leadership Group started. Is that all right with you, Elizabeth?
Fine. Mhm.
All right. I'll be right back.
I think Jerry Lehrberger left, it says on my phone. So who do we
Okay, I'll be
have?
right back.
Okay.
Hey, Elizabeth, it's Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, hi. I'm yeah, I'm a little between places, but I'll be back on video in a little bit.
Okay, so it's just me and you right now.
And I apologize, I have to use the bathroom really quick, so I will be mute and mute for just a moment.
That's